remove the spring. Before you pull it out, look at this side up. Because what happens is when you pull that out, you'll drop it, keep this in tension.
One of the questions we get asked the most is about putting the spring in on a CK-1500 with a 4-inch controller. And so we're going to go over that right now. The passenger side went without a hitch. Everything worked great on it. And so we noticed something about the driver's side. This isn't going to be on every truck, but if we can come in here, we found some flashing here that interfered with the spring installation. I took my plasma and I just trimmed about a 1/4 inch off of that to make the spring a lot easier to put in. So I also took a little silicone paste because when we get this thing on the ground, we want to make sure the spring seats. And so we took a little silicone paste to it. Where's the spring at? So on the spring, all the springs have a clamp end on it and they have a cut end on it. So this is where they clamp the spring when they roll it. This is where they cut the spring. We're gonna use the cut side up, clamp side down. So you can see there's a little angle on that spring. That's the clamp side. That's gonna go down. So basically we're just gonna put it in. Little help.
Got it? Here we go. Now let's check the upper spring seat. We want to make sure we're in that upper spring seat correctly. It's in there. It's in there, right? Yeah. Okay, up we go, up we go. Sorry, the spring's a little dirty, but look at this, okay. I see it. When you come off the jack stand, that's as far as you can go. Where do you find that? That's where you go. That's it, it's off the ground. See, that's spring on it, that's it.
Okay, so now we got the shock on. We're going to tighten that up a bit more. Wait, we got the shock on, so now we'll get rid of our jack. And we'll put the spindle on, the brake caliper, and the upper controller. Okay, so we're off the lift now, and we're ready to give it a short test drive, short and slow. And we're going to set the springs and seat the springs. They are not seated yet. That's why we put a little grease on the cup. So we make sure we're going to set the springs. So this is how we're going to do it. Remember, the whole rear end's loose. Everything's loose. So we're not going to take it out in speed. We're just going to take it for a real slow test drive and set the springs. Make sure the bushings are set on the rear end. So let's go. Okay, here we go. We're going to take it slow. It just so happens in our little street here, we have the perfect spring setting speed bump. What this is going to do, we put a little grease, remember, on the cup of that spring. We're going to come up to our speed bump, and we're going to set these springs right in place. Boom, they're set. Rear end set. That's it. You don't have to go out and go crazy. You'll hear the springs set in. And this also gives your springs some motion to make sure they're not only seated, but they're set. And the rear end bushings are set. So now we can go back and tighten everything up. So we'll just make sure and hit this speed bump again. Here we go. Boom, you know they're seated. On this particular control arm, we have to seat them every time we unload them. The spring's not going to come out. But it just takes either a little braking, hit a little bump, and that's all there is to it. So now we have to do our tightening, and remember, we have not decompressed or jacked the truck up. We've kept the compression on the truck, so everything's going to tighten up right. So everything we've touched, we're going to tighten. We're going to start from the back all the way back to the shackles and the springs, and we're going to work our way forward. Make sure everything is tight. The reason we did this is because your bushings won't be right if you tighten it up while it's on jack stands. So if you tighten it up on jack stands, everything is going to be a problem. So we tighten everything we've touched all the way to the rear, and we work our way to the front. So let's go up to the front. We can do it from the front end. So our control arms, we can tighten the lower control arms as much as we want. We're using the original adjusters, which aren't original, they're aftermarket, but the adjusters, if you don't already have them, you're going to need them. Come up here. Because we need to take a look at our tie rods. This is very important that your adjusters, you make room for your bump stop, or you're going to tear up your bump stop. So just make sure those are in this configuration here. You can also play around with your toe and make sure your toe is somewhat close, so when you take it to the alignment shop, you're somewhere close, and make sure they know that the adjusters have to miss this bump stop. Your control arms, you see they sit nice and flat. That's what you want. That's how you know your spring is completely seated, because of the way the control arm sits. And so you want to make sure everything's tight. And your cotter pins are in on your ball joints, both upper and lower. So now we got everything nice and tightened up. Another thing you want to do. So what we did is we cut a chunk out of the inner fender well. Your alignment guy is going to love you for this. So now you can get your short socket and ratchet in to do the alignment on the back side without driving yourself nuts and busting your knuckles, and your alignment guy is going to thank you. So when you have the inner fender wells out, when you're doing the initial installation, or which is the best time to do it, you can just do it with a cutoff wheel real quick. It only takes a couple minutes, and that's going to give your alignment guy all the room he needs to do a nice adjustment without having to unload the truck. A lot of times what's going to happen is they're going to jack this thing up because they can't get to the adjusters. And that's not what you want to see. You never want to jack this thing up on alignment. So that's the last thing. And fool around with the alignment a little bit yourself so you can get the wheels straighter. And then you can take it to your alignment shop